is Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
Hello, I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of Kings of Leon's You Somebody? Oh, I thought it was Sex on Fire. I was ready to sing it at the top of my lungs. Did you hear the one about the three sons of a preacher who one day decided to start a rock band with their cousin and somehow sell millions of albums, win some Grammys, and have one of the biggest crossover rock songs in recent memory? No? Well, great, because I'm here to tell you all about how Kings of Leon did just that. Before the days of lighting their sex on fire, Kings of Leon were the complete opposite of rock stars. Nathan, Caleb, and Jared Followill were three good old southern boys from a small suburb about 17 miles east of Nashville, Tennessee. Their parents were Ivan, a Pentecostal church preacher and traveling evangelist, and Betty Ann, who ran the church worship. At first, the Followills traveled across the rural south in a purple Oldsmobile, attending all-night church meetings, tent revivals, and healings. The family would be on the road for the better part of the year, making it hard for them to call any place home. But when Jared was born in 1986, they settled down just outside of Memphis until he was about 6, and then went back on the road after Ivan began drinking and got into some trouble. The boys were homeschooled by their mum and given strict rules that prevented them from swimming with girls, playing competitive sports, and even wearing shorts, which made water activities pretty awkward. Movies were also prohibited, the same with music other than what they'd heard in church, but church music was becoming a bigger part of their lives. Nathan would begin drumming on stage with a band during his father's sermons, and Caleb followed as a singer with hopes of becoming a pastor like his father. The relationship between their parents, however, was heavily strained due to Ivan's heavy drinking, and in 1997, they split up following his departure from the church. That seemed to change everything for their three sons. Nathan would tell The Independent, "Our parents' divorce shattered the whole mirage of this perfect little existence the outside world couldn't touch and couldn't pollute. We realized that our dad, the greatest man we ever knew in our eyes, was only human, and so are we. This whole new world was open to us." For Caleb, all it took was hearing secular music to change his mind about following in his father's footsteps. He would tell George Strombolopoulos,
"For me, it was Tommy James and the Shondells, Crimson and Clover.
Oh, that's a creepy song.
I was riding with my uncle, and he always listened to oldies. And that song came on, and when I got to the I was just like, what is that? And I knew that I wanted to make music, and then the next day at school, I got in the car with my buddy, and he put on some Pearl Jam, and I was just like, wow, there is obviously a lot out there that I need to experience."
With their parents apart, the Followill brothers began to stray from their religious upbringing. Nathan and Caleb got into rock and roll, alcohol, and weed, while Jared became a little shit with a BB gun, his brothers would tell Rolling Stone. Their cousin, Matthew Followill, who lived in nearby Mississippi, was basically welcomed into the fold as an unofficial fourth brother. Living just outside of Nashville, Nathan and Caleb decided to move to Music City and try their hand at a career in music. Both had dropped out of school, Nathan from college and Caleb from high school. At first they were working at the mall, but then they began writing songs, waiting for their moment.
I did. I made that decision when I was 17, that I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and obviously, if there are repercussions, well then it's me. I'm going to have to live up to it. But I mean, I saw so many people around me that tried to live their lives being perfect, and in the process, their imperfection showed so much more than a normal person that actually went out, dipped their toes into it, and had, drank and had sex and did all these things. And they ended up, by the end of their lives, having a straighter head than these people that tried to live this impossible life of perfection. So for me, it was, obviously I would lose sleep at night, and I just kind of had to numb myself and think, look, you're going to feel like this for the rest of your life. But, the Bible that I read, God's favorite people were hugely flawed people. I mean, murderers, rapists, he hung out with prostitutes, and it's like, so why? Like, who's to say that I'm supposed to live by what this man is telling me I'm supposed to live by.
I think me and Caleb were the only ones that were really like had to have this happen because we were out of high school. It was time to figure out, what we were going to do with our lives. I dropped out of college to do the songwriting thing. I think Jared and Matt were still in high school, so I think it was a kick-ass opportunity for them to go. But if we would have did one tour and it didn't work out, I don't think they would have had nearly as tough of a time as reacclimating back to, you're still a sophomore in high school, as opposed to me and Caleb like, you bum, you need to go get a job.
Believe it or not, but Nathan and Caleb Followill were originally a country singing duo called the Followill Brothers. They performed at open mic nights and signed a publishing deal that helped support their weed smoking habit. The guy that signed them, Ken Levitan, introduced the brothers to a songwriter named Angelo Petraglia, and almost immediately he became an intrinsic part of their world, tutoring them on how to write a song. Petraglia would tell Rolling Stone when they came in, they had a soulful Everly Brothers vibe, but soon they realized, we don't want to play country music, we want to play rock and roll. With little musical knowledge, Nathan and Caleb were schooled on the classics by Petraglia, who introduced them to the Rolling Stones, The Clash, and the Velvet Underground. It was around that time that they caught a performance on MTV by a hot new band called The Strokes and realized that was the kind of band they were striving to become.
I think our music is innocent in a way that we weren't influenced by anyone. It's not like we started out, we want to be the next White Stripes or the next Strokes or the next whatever. It's just the music that we make, that's the music that comes out when we get our instruments on and we play. And it's early on, everyone compared us to Leonard Skinner or the Allman Brothers or the whatever. And one of the Allman Brothers came to our show in New York, and someone from, Rolling Stone or MTV or something like, so what do you think about these guys being compared, being the next Allman Brothers or whatever? He said, I thought they were British. He said, I didn't even know they were American. He said, I had no idea. So it just shows you how funny it is, the full circle that music comes.
With some guidance from the younger ears of Jared and Matthew, Nathan and Caleb pivoted to rock and roll, writing a song called California Waiting, which secured them a record deal with RCA, the same label as The Strokes. There was one catch: the label wanted to put a band together for them. In a risky act of defiance, the Followills rejected the offer, and instead they told the execs they would bring in their young brother and cousin and put together their own band. They told RCA to give them 6 weeks to put something together.
We knew that, we were at the very beginning of our musical knowledge. So it was like, okay, so if this record deal goes away, cool. Within the next 5 years, we'll have another one, and we'll actually be proud.
Well, we got to pick and choose out of 8 labels. Like RCA was the one we picked.
Right.
So,
well, I think RCA knew, they at least, made us believe that, they knew what we wanted. I mean, they knew the kind of music that we wanted to make. And so, we'd go to the label and they'd show us the Strokes and play us music. It was like, yeah, cool. But then, when they wanted to put guys in our band that had a look and a thing, and it's like, that's not what we're into. I want to be on stage with people that have my blood running through their veins. That's how you're going to be able to be honest and real and really passionate.
And so, in 1999, the two brothers recruited their younger sibling, Jared, who was only 14 at the time, to play bass, an instrument he had never, ever touched. At first, he wasn't happy with the instrument assignment, thinking bass was too uncool, but he decided to give it a shot. Jared's taste in contemporary music would help shape the band's sound, introducing his brothers to classic bands like Joy Division and The Cure, and newer indie artists he was discovering. Jared would tell NME, the only reason I got in this band in the first place was my mixtape abilities. They also kidnapped their cousin Matthew from Mississippi, telling his mum that they'd bring him back after a week. Matthew had only taken 2 guitar lessons, and they had to buy him a guitar. But just like that, they became a proper rock band. And for the next month, the Followills locked themselves in a basement, smoked a lot of weed, and came up with some songs. Of course, they still needed a name. Petraglia suggested going with one that leaned into their religious connections, like Kings of Zion. While they turned that idea down, they did come up with something close: Kings of Leon. The name would be a tribute to their shared grandfather, though they also agreed that it sounded cool, like a gang. Kings of Leon entered a studio to record with popular old country singer-songwriter Ryan Adams and producer Ethan Johns, who had just produced Adams, as well as Counting Crows and Rufus Wainwright. They cut 5 songs for the Holy Roller Novocaine EP, which was released in February 2003. The EP channeled bands like The Strokes and the White Stripes, who at the time were at the forefront of a garage rock revolution. While it didn't do much for the band in America, it started to build buzz overseas in the UK, where guitar music was all that mattered at the time. With their retro chic look, shaggy long hair, and deep South drawl, Kings of Leon were ready to become a big deal when they released their debut album, Youth and Young Manhood, in July 2003. Recorded with Ethan Johns and Angelo Petraglia, the album made them an immediate obsession for the music press, with NME declaring it was one of the best debut albums of the last 10 years. It didn't take long for music writers to make comparisons to both classic southern rock bands like the Allman Brothers and Lynyrd Skynyrd, and newer bands. A nickname, the Southern Strokes, stuck, and all of a sudden the Followills were the most talked about rock band on earth, especially in Britain, where the album sold 7 times as much as it did back home in America. A large part of the fascination came from being so different from the other cool rock bands. They weren't from New York City or Detroit. They were sons of a preacher man from Tennessee who were running wild and playing the devil's music. And that made them a huge draw. Nathan would tell Relevant magazine, I think part of the early publicity has to do with the way we were raised, the whole good versus evil thing. We went from being in church every night to being in clubs and bars. I also think the fact that we're all related and where we came from was part of it too. Luckily for us, the story kept the attention long enough for them to give our music a chance. In a 2003 interview with Much Music, Caleb elaborated on how their southern upbringing influenced their music, explaining that growing up in the church didn't mean that they saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Quite the opposite, in fact.
I think the reason we write songs and stuff the way we do is because the fact that our dad was a preacher. You know, a lot of people assume that you see the good side of life, but really you see more bad than good. I mean, you know, whenever we'd go somewhere, the preacher would go up to my dad and be like, well, she used to be a prostitute or this used to be that. And so I think that's where it came from, We always saw different things and we always, we just wrote about things that kept us interested. You can only write about a girl so many times.
But the whole Southern charm shtick the press had generated would quickly get on their nerves whenever they were asked about their roots. Speaking to The Guardian in November 2003, they insisted they were a band from the South, not a Southern band. I don't think we're that Southern, Jared said. We're not racist. We don't tote guns around and do stupid bullshit like that. We're just normal people. If we were overly Southern, we wouldn't hang out with the people we do. Our friends are from New York and all over, and they wouldn't hang out with stupid people. When the band did return home, they certainly didn't look like they represented the South. In a later interview with The Guardian, Caleb recalled that we stuck out like a sore thumb with these big mustaches and bell-bottoms and shirts that went to our belly buttons. All the country boys in Nashville were like, who the fuck are these guys? But then we'd land in the UK and everybody had the same mustache, pants, and shirt. For the next year, the band would tour with The Strokes and play all of the big festivals all over the world. They even opened for U2, which validated their success in their mum's eyes. Kings of Leon wasted no time writing and recording their second album. Again, they worked with Ethan Johns and Angelo Petraglia just over a year after dropping Youth and Manhood. They followed it up with Aha Shake Heartbreak. To appease their hardcore fans, the album was first released in the UK, then North America 4 months later. Quick to set it apart from their first album, the songs focus more on moodier lyrics, more angular guitars, and more complex time signatures. To put it in their terms, Nathan would tell Rolling Stone, the last record was more whiskey and this one's more wine. In an interview with Much Music, Caleb stressed that they were thinking more about how they felt with these new songs.
Everyone writes their second album about the road and about stuff like that. We wanted to write about the emotions that you go through, because we've kind of had a chance to, we got really big in the UK and in Europe and not so much in America, so we got to kind of see what it was like. And now, I know we're in Canada now, but we've been playing in America a lot, and it's very similar to the way that it was in the UK and stuff like that in the beginning. And so, the one thing that we want to be able to consistently listen to if it's going to be about sex, make it pure and make it right and make it emotional. Even when you're talking about the bad stuff, the flaws and the mistakes, you want it to be pure, I think.
Aha Shake Heartbreak was well received by critics and fans, but didn't seem to have the same impact as their debut. Once again, though, they found themselves playing shows with U2 as well as Bob Dylan and Pearl Jam, but their audience mostly remained across the pond. America proved to be a tough nut to crack, despite it being their home, and their second album didn't do much to expand their audience. So they went back into the studio again with Ethan Johns and Angelo Petraglia, but took their time. Looking to record an album that aimed higher, they used some of the big artists they toured with as inspiration to push themselves as musicians. They wanted songs that sounded good, played in a small club, but also a hockey arena. In an interview with Much Music, Caleb said the goal was to grow, but not give in to newfangled techniques.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We knew that we wanted to take some risks, and I mean, this is the first time I've used vocal effects or anything like that. I mean, we still stick to our guns. We won't use Pro Tools. We won't go in there and overdub everything. I mean, this record was as live as any record that we've ever made, but we were a lot more polished before we went in the studio, to where we didn't want people to know that it was live, And we've been touring with bands that have been playing big arenas, and so when you're coming up with ideas in an arena, they naturally just sound bigger. So after we did that, we took the songs back to our garage, and they still sounded big,
Because of the Times was released in April 2007 and showed off their ambition to build a sound they could fill arenas with on their own. Some critics applauded the band for expanding their vision, while others accused them of abandoning the sound that established them. Speaking to Clash Music, Caleb said, "A lot of people, it kind of scared them a little bit when they hear it. I see what people think when they hear the music. It kind of puts them back a little bit and they think that we've abandoned our sound and stuff like that. But they don't realize that we've always changed and we've always wanted to be doing something different, that not only from what we have done, but what's going on out there." While it didn't produce any hit singles, Because of the Times did well in the charts, reaching number 1 in the UK and a respectable number 25 in the US. But they knew they were capable of doing even more. Only days after releasing Because of the Times, the band were telling the music press that they'd already begun writing their 4th album. A few months later, they went into Blackbird's studio and this time recorded with Jacquire King, who had won a Grammy for producing Tom Waits and also worked with Modest Mouse on their breakthrough album. It would be their first album without producer Ethan Johns. Nathan would tell Uncut, "We knew this record was definitely going to be our bold attempt at trying to make a record that wasn't necessarily obviously Kings of Leon. And with the first 2 records with Ethan, as soon as you heard the first note of any song, you could tell it was definitely a Kings of Leon song, just based on the sound that Ethan got. So going into this record, we knew that we wanted to step away from that sound." The guys entered the studio looking to make new sounds and capture the songs exactly how they sounded in their heads, but one problem set them back. Caleb got into a fight with Nathan and hurt his arm.
Me and my brother got in a bit of a tussle over, we still to this day don't know what it was about. It was probably a girl or something like that, but ended up with us fighting and my shoulder coming out of socket, and then the rest is history. I had to go get surgery, and they hooked me up with a lot of nice pharmaceuticals and told me not to play my guitar for 9 months. And 3 days later, I pulled my cast off because the pills felt so good. I wanted to write some songs.
Pulled your own cast off?
Yeah, well, it was more of like a sling kind of thing, but it was pretty tight. But I had my girlfriend help me pop it off, and I started writing.
I helped him out.
Man.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's funny though, I could barely move my arm like this. I couldn't come down here, so if you'll notice, most of the songs on the record are written really high up on the neck because that's the only place I could go.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas came and went, and with their level of confidence, they were able to turn even the bad ideas into good ones. Case in point was a song called Sex on Fire, which they weren't too sure about at first.
It's strange. It's strange when you're proud of yourself for the music that you've made, and then you go in there just another day and make another album, write another song, and it just does something that nothing else has done that you've written or that you've recorded. I don't know why this one did what it did. I think a song like Sex on Fire, which isn't my favorite Kings of Leon song, but a song like that I think it's kind of a breath of fresh air when you had, for X amount of years, every band trying to write a song about war and politics and this and that, trying to have this big breakthrough moment, and then you turn on the radio and you hear Your Sex is on Fire. It doesn't even make sense. It's like, cool, someone's not trying to be so heavy,
That song would change the band's fortunes, however. Released as the first single from their next album, Sex on Fire would become the band's first bona fide hit. It went to number 1 in the UK, Ireland, Australia, and Finland, and even cracked the Billboard Hot 100. It also earned them their first Grammy for Best Rock Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group, and the band's fourth album, Only by the Night, was released in September 2008, and riding high on the success of Sex on Fire, it quickly catapulted the band to a new level. Up next was a single called You Somebody, which showed a softer side of the band. Originally, they didn't want to release it. Caleb thought it was too sappy and felt embarrassed by it. But after getting some encouraging words from Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder, they released it as the album's second single. Caleb wrote You Somebody about being far from home and feeling lonely, longing for intimacy and needing his girlfriend. Written after he was injured in his drunken fight with Nathan, he was feeling vulnerable. He ended up using the same chords as Up Where We Belong, the Oscar-winning ballad by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes. Initially, he thought it was terrible because it was such a pop song, but his band members liked what they heard, comparing it to a band they all loved, Arcade Fire. In an interview with Uncut, Caleb explained how he was convinced to finish the song, saying, "When I came up with I Could Use Somebody, I didn't know if I was talking about a person or home or God. I felt immediately that it was a big song, and it scared me away." Then when we were writing the record, Matthew kept saying, "What's that song, man?" And I acted like I didn't know what he was talking about. Then finally I went, "All right, we'll do it." And as soon as we started playing it, the producers looked up and said, "Whoa, that's a good song." I was like, okay. Turns out it was a good song. Upon its release in October 2008, You Somebody began to expose Kings of Leon to a whole new audience. All of a sudden, it wasn't just alternative and rock radio that was playing the band. The song was resonating with pop audiences and crossing over into the mainstream. The song exploded onto a number of Billboard charts, including rock, alternative, adult alternative, top 40, and much to the band's disgust, adult contemporary. Caleb would tell Spin, "We definitely got bigger than we wanted to be. You feel like you've done something wrong. That woman in mum jeans who'd never let me date her daughter, she likes my music. That's fucking not cool. You almost start doing damage control. When people ask you to do stuff, you're like, no, because I can already tell this record is going to get to a level where people will fucking hate us." Eventually, it reached a point where Caleb even began to tell journalists that hearing the song made him want to shoot himself in the head. But over the years, he grew to accept the fact that the song became bigger than the band itself. Speaking to Guitar World in 2011, Caleb admitted, "The lyric itself, I knew, was something a lot of people in the world could relate to, because no matter if you're successful or unsuccessful, if you're male or female, this or that, there's always that point in everyone's life where they could use a hand and use someone to be there for them and let them know what they're doing is okay." Then you hear like 1 million people cover it on YouTube, and you're like, all right, I get it. Because I remember when the White Stripes came out with Seven Nation Army, and after a while it was like, I fucking hate this song. Because every DJ was spinning it and every band was covering it. But then, as soon as it stopped being played, I heard it on the radio again, and I was like, I love this fucking song. So love it or hate it, I guess You Somebody is going to be that song for us, whether we like it or not. And that's okay. With its commercial success, You Somebody made Kings of Leon one of the biggest rock bands in the world. The song became their highest charting song on the Billboard Hot 100, reaching number 4 and bettering Sex on Fire by 52 spots. It also helped sell records, with more than 7 million copies sold. Only by the Night would outsell its predecessor because of the times by 6 times. Now the band were selling out arenas, headlining festivals, and playing ping pong with superfan Prince Harry? Beating him even. Nathan told Gibson.com that they didn't give in to royalty either, saying, "I'm not sure what the etiquette is when you play a prince at table tennis, but hey, I'm a king, aren't I? A king trumps a prince." I think the other guys thought, maybe you should let a real prince win. But he's so tall, and he's got military training, so I figured he can look after himself. But perhaps the true measure of its success came in 2010 when Kings of Leon shocked everybody at the Grammy Awards. You Somebody took home the award for Record of the Year, beating out Lady Gaga's Poker Face, Black Eyed Peas' I Got a Feeling, Beyoncé's Halo, and Taylor Swift's You Belong With Me. The song also won for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal and Best Rock Song. It was also nominated for Song of the Year, but lost out to Beyoncé's Single Ladies, which I'm sure they were okay with. Over the years, You Somebody's become a meaningful song to so many people. It's still all over the radio, and check your streaming platform of choice and it'll be there on hundreds of playlists. It's also become a popular wedding song, something I'm pretty certain the Followills boys never expected when they wrote it. And it's been covered by a whole lot of artists ranging from Paramore, Kelly Clarkson, Shawn Mendes to Nick Jonas and Nickelback. And when she was only 12 years old, Lorde sang it live on New Zealand radio. And a few years ago, Toronto R&B act Division covered You Somebody, even interpolating lyrics from Sex on Fire into it. Like a Kings of Leon megamix. I'll let the band themselves describe what the song now means to them. iHeartRadio Canada's Jesse Mods recently caught up with Nathan and Matthew Followill to discuss the band's latest album, Can We Please Have Fun? During the chat, Nathan shared with us how special it is to have a song that's touched so many people across the world.
Oh, not to sound cocky, I knew the second we hit the last symbol, last note, whatever, and heard that back, I was like, we have just made our first true, like, wow, this song would have potential to not only reach club kids, this will have, moms listening to this in the car, like, oh my God, and to see how many people have covered it and how many different variations of how they cover it and their own interpretation of it is always so special to me, because I'm like, what an amazing thing to have a song that reached so many people. And still to this day, every Google alert I get is 3 or 4 different versions of people doing their version of You Somebody. And man, I just look at it as what a gift to be able to give to the world for the rest of our lives, no matter what we do for the rest of our careers. It could end tomorrow. And I will always have a smile on my face when You Somebody or Sex on Fire comes on, because 4 boys from the South that never had a chance in hell of making it out of a paint store have somehow put their musical mark on the world forever. No matter what happens, those songs will always be out there for people to enjoy.
That was the story of Kings of Leon's You Somebody on Encore, with new episodes out every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.